Yes guys, what is going on? I hope you're having a fantastic day. Welcome back to another episode of Herd to Healing Tales of Triumph. Today we are talking about grounding and emotional work. So I will split this into two different videos because it's quite technical. So today we're going to cover emotional work, and then next time we're going to cover how to physically ground yourself and the tools and techniques in order to ground yourself and be able to bring yourself back down to homeostasis mode if you've ever been triggered or you're in a public place and you can't bring yourself into that particular state of mode. Now, I just want to move that there. Now, as I have gone on and on and on and spoken about different knowledge packs and how to build up your knowledge and understand more and more and more, today is going to be, again, much of the same. Preach everything that worked for me and hopefully it works for you. And this is what we teach as well, but not everything, but a lot of this. The key things we're going over are the key things that a lot of counselors have taught me, a lot of different therapists have taught me, and a lot of different people use in a lot of different variations of life. So, emotional work. Up on screen at the moment is the feeling wheel. Now, the feeling wheel helps you name and understand your emotions. So each segment corresponds with the opposing segment on the wheel. There are 6 segments and 3 operational parts. Positional, and there are 3 oppositional parts. So you've got your 6 key emotions in the middle, and then out of that, you've got more and more and more different feelings and emotions that you can use. So, simply put, the more knowledge you have about yourself, the more knowledge about why and when and how you feel on any given day through any given time of the day, different parts of the day, different times of the month, different times of the year, especially for men and women, this is going to be very different. So for men's hormonal levels peak at the top of the day with the testosterone being the highest, and then throughout the day it just gets lower and lower and lower, being the testosterone lowest at the evening time. Women obviously on a 28-day cycle of their menstrual cycle, so your feelings change week to week, day to day, different things like that. So you need to be more mindful of when these things happen, why they happen, and how they happen, and given your hormonal stress in different parts of the day. So this is why when you write things down and you keep a log and you keep a journal of why things are happening when they're happening, then you're able to notice things will happen at certain times of the day, things will happen at certain times of the month, things will happen at certain times of the year, depending on different external environmental factors and internal factors given your hormonal levels and balances. So this is another big thing about food as well. So this is why keeping a food diary and a food log as well as a emotional log and a diary is extremely beneficial, because then the more data you have about, so say you have a massive bout of depression after you've eaten a very carb heavy meal, that might not be that necessarily. You might deem that not being able to move and not being able to digest the food properly and be able to be happy after eating a meal like that. You might correlate that with some form of depression, which has happened before. I've seen that in different people before. They say, oh, I always feel so shit after I've eaten a massive meal. And I'm like, okay, what is that meal? And they're like, oh, it's a pasta. And I'm like, okay, so you just feel crap after you have that amount of pasta. Maybe that could have been led from a binge eating episode. There's so many different correlating factors. The more information you have written down about when, why, when, how, all those different things, then the more you're able to piece together about why you are doing the things that you're doing, why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and how then best to eliminate those negative feelings and replace them with positive feelings. So one of the gut is a second brain, and the easiest way to make your brain function better and for you to feel better a lot of the time is simply just to change the way that you eat. That's been massive for me. It's been massive for a lot of my clients. If you simply just changing the way you eat can change your brain functions and how they operate so dramatically. And it's something that seems so basic, but it can improve your cognitive function. It can improve your daily life. It can improve your overall balance of life, and it can improve your overall quality of life by simply changing what you eat and how you eat it, rather than eating ultra high processed carbohydrated foods or ultra high processed foods. You swap it for a more well-balanced diet, or even if you're eating no carbohydrates and you think going on a keto diet might be good, but you're feeling crap all the time, and adding some form of carbohydrates in might also be extremely beneficial for you. So there's loads of different things to look at, and you just got to find out what works, what doesn't work, why it doesn't work, all these different things. So super, super, super important to figure out why and when and how these things work. And like I say, information and knowledge is king, especially when you're going through a transformative phase like this. The more information you have, the more things you have written down about your feelings and all these different things, the better it can be. So the emotional wheel. So what I want you to do over this course of this week is go through the emotional wheel and actually understand where you're at in the emotional wheel on a daily basis, how it's then going to affect you, and then simply how that is going to change your life and how that is going to impact you on a daily basis. So if you feel sad, why do you feel sad? When, how, what made you into that way? What are some of the things you try to get out of feeling sad? You've got to experiment. This is a massively experimental thing. Each person is wildly different, and what works for you now might not work for you in 6 months' time. And we've gone over all these different things. So another, for me, less complicated way of putting this is the emotional chart. Now, blown up on screen at the moment is the emotional chart. Now, the emotional chart you can see is laid out a little bit, in my opinion, it's laid out a little bit more organized in my head. The emotional wheel is a bit like, I don't know, I just don't like it myself personally, but it's extremely good. Some people prefer that layout, which is why we give you both. The chart itself is a little bit more simple, a little bit more stripped back. There's not as many feelings and emotions, so there's a lot less for you to sort of think about. You can just categorize yourself a little bit easier. Now, we want to be in the hello area. We want to be happy, we want to be smiling, we want to try and be in that area as much as possible rather than the other areas, the blue, the grey, the red, and all those different things, because they're essentially they can be led from a trigger of some description. So again, why were you triggered? What mood were you in when you've been triggered? What brought you down from the trigger? What made you come back into a more homeostasis mode? Again, information, and then bang, you can start finding out what works, what doesn't work, why it works, why you've been triggered, when you've been triggered, how you've been triggered, what state of mode you're in when you've been triggered. Do you see how everything that we've been talking about thus far has been coming together so that you're actually able to create long-term beneficial change in your life, and that you're actually able to identify why you are the way that you are, how you are dealing with the things that you're dealing, and when and why, and all those different wonderful things. So it's extremely important to ensure that you have as much information as possible, especially early on. The earlier on that you can start making notes and you can start finding out why and when and how, the better it's going to be, simply put, for sure. So what I've asked you to do is write down all the different feelings and emotions and when and why and how you've been triggered. If you haven't been triggered in any day, that's amazing, awesome, but continue to write down what emotion you've been feeling in that day, use maybe a more complex feeling, why you were feeling that during the day. Is there anything that you could have done to bring yourself out of that particular mode and make you feel a little bit better? Try and engage with yourself and understand yourself, listen to your body, listen to your mind, and find out why you are feeling the way you're feeling and how best to deal with those emotions on a daily basis, because not every day, some days you're going to wake up feeling amazing, some days you're going to wake up feeling crap. And again, immediately, why? Did you sleep bad? Did you wake up in loads of times for a wee in the middle of the night? There's so many different reasons about why you might start the day off bad, but that then doesn't matter. Then that doesn't correlate to why the whole day was bad. You know what I mean? So you can turn things around. And again, positive affirmations, how you speak to yourself is extremely important. Why you speak to yourself the way that you do, and then obviously making sure that you do speak to yourself in a much better light, extremely important. So definitely something to think about. So yeah, the emotions, when all those different things, extremely important for your journey to simply eliminate how we can eliminate those feelings and how we can eliminate the negative feelings and replace them with positive feelings. So how is this related for me, and how is me? Now, this has helped me massively, if I'm going to be honest. Like I say, knowledge is king, knowledge is power. Being able to understand why you are the way you are, why you feel the way that you do. So I would have bouts of depression, I'd have bouts of anxiety, I'd have bouts of sadness and all those different kinds of things at random times during the day. I thought they were random times during the day, but everything was activated by something. So everything negative was a trigger of some description, even down to what I was doing for work, for a prime example. So when I was on site, I would have random bouts of sadness and I could never figure out why. I went through all the different things that I went through, and then it was simply because I thought it was things that I might be doing, I thought it was things that might be eaten, so I changed the way I eat, I changed the way I ate, I changed the way that I did things at work, I changed the clothes, I changed everything that I thought I could, I changed smells. And what the overwhelming thing that was that no matter what I did, when I was at site on work, when I was on site at work, I would just be realistically just like pretty upset with the whole thing. And that wasn't the work itself, because I actually really enjoy the work itself. What I figured out is because when I was going through all my shit and when I was massive, like really deep into drugs, I was working on site. And so the site work itself was a trigger for me to remember those times of when I was a complete addict and I was just hating life and just doing drugs all the time. And that's what that reminded me of. And so then that in and out of itself was the thing that was causing me the issue. And that was the problem. That was the big problem that I was going through. So I needed to basically change what I was doing. But then again, things like I'd already identified that bar work was another one of those things, because that was one of those things that I used to go and do, and again, drugs and drinking, and it's when I was going through even worse stuff really was the site work and the bar work. So I knew that if I was going to go back to a normal 9 to 5, I could never do those two things again. Well, I could, but then I'd just be triggered all the time, and I'd be constantly like fight or flight mode all the time, and just wouldn't particularly enjoy it. So working through my emotions, again, information, it wasn't smells, it wasn't the clothes, it was just the environment itself, but I had to work through each step individually, have that information behind me so that I could identify what the actual issue was in the first place. And then once I've identified that issue very specifically, I can then work around it. Again, changing your environment, going back to one of the first things that we did, I then stopped working, I stopped doing the site work specifically so that I wasn't triggered every single day all the time, and then I was able to do what I wanted to do, even though I had less money, and even though my career in my PT stuff wasn't where it is now, I was able to get where I needed to be because I had all that time, because I didn't want to be triggered. Because I wasn't being triggered all the time, I didn't then need to have tools, techniques and coping mechanisms in order to be able to thrive. I was just thriving anyway. And so you see how those sort of things correlated to me now being where I am currently to this day. And again, it's information build up. The more information you have about why and when and how, and then why you feel that way, and then how best to deal with that. I had all the tools and techniques, I had the coping mechanisms in place so that even though I was being triggered, I was able to deal with that. So if I needed to stay on site and earn the money, then I could have done that, but I had the option to leave. Again, very lucky to have the option to leave and not do that and do something else. So then that's what I did, change my environment, biggest thing that helped me. So that's essentially how the charts and the wheels helped me, because I would go through the day, I'd just on my phone quickly make a note that I felt this at that time because of this, I smelt this because of that, I touched this, whatever it may have been at that time. I then made a note of it on my phone, correlated it to my book, my massive book of why I felt the way I did, basically my information book of what I did and how I did it and when I would do it. And then that book itself, then I was able to read it and identify it and look back and think, well, it wasn't that, and then so it must be this. Do you know what I mean? So that's the information that essentially helped me in that regard, in terms of charts and feelings and all that kind of jazz. So it's another tool to add, it's another information book to add, it's another information page to add to your book. Like I say, the more information you have, the better. I'm not going to keep beating a dead stick here, but you get the overwhelming feeling of this. You learn about yourself. Not many people know that much about themselves, and you are the expert on yourself. So be an expert on yourself. People ask you, well, why do you do that? Oh, I don't know. Somebody asked me why I do something. I know exactly why. My parents, for example, have always said, why do you have to ask about everything? Why do you need to know? And I need to know because I want to know, because it's important to me to understand why things are the way that they are. And so that's why I always have an answer. So like, random things can happen. I have a thing in my group classes in one of the gyms, is that people ask me, oh, what's today's curiosity? And it's like a random fact that I know. Why do round pizzas come in square boxes, or how a crane's built, or random knowledge. But if I look at something and I think it's interesting and I don't know how it happens, then I go and find out how it happens, and then it just stays. Why do you breathe? It's not smoke, but why do you breathe air when it's cold outside? Those random things that people ask you just on a whim, it can happen. You think, oh, why does that happen? And then you just go, oh, I know why. Boom, there's information. That's the way that I work. That's the way that I like to work. I like to know as many things as possible, because it's just, every day is a school day. Life is a complete and utter knowledge. It's just information overwhelm all the time. So it's good to know as much as you can when you can, and actually identify why you do the things that you do. So yes, that's this week's homework. Make sure you go away, understand your feelings, use the charts and wheels provided, and actually understand what you do, why you feel the way that you feel about certain things on an overall day. Track the way that you feel week to week, day to day, minute to minute if you want to. And again, the more information you have, the better equipped you are at dealing with your issues. So other than that, guys, please like, share, comment your thoughts down below. Share this with somebody you think would be useful, and don't forget to tune in for the next one.